Hold on. We've been getting a lot of response to last night's segment on Ron Paul about whether he's acting more like a Democrat than a Republican. Congressman Paul has said the raid to kill bin Laden was, quote, absolutely unnecessary, and he favors legalized drugs. My next guest says Ron Paul is giving libertarians a bad name. Joining me now is Chuck Roger, columnist for the American Thinker. Sir, when I read your column, I was struck by that line. Mr. Paul gives libertarians a bad name. Does he really?
Yes, he does. My main problem with Congressman Paul is that he is not a clear thinker. Ron Paul has made some statements over the years and taken positions over the years that demonstrate what I believe to be some seriously muddled thinking, and I could give you two examples. The most recent examples I could think of is the one that you referred to just now, where he said the raid to kill bin Laden was absolutely not necessary. And the second one, I think, is even more egregious, where on the Stossel show on this very network just recently, Congressman Paul failed to refute a comment that basically attributed him with the trait of liking to work with progressives and a socialist in Congress to advance legislation.
Right, sir. I remember that. I actually remember the show. I know what you're talking about. But again, he was on the panel. He wasn't asked to respond until later. I think Mr. Stossel later asked him, and he did clarify. Isn't that right?
Well, he clarified and he didn't. The position he took, basically, and I don't remember his exact words, he verified that, yes, I do work with progressives. He did not refute a very specific comment that I felt was to his detriment made by a self-declared man of the left and historian, I believe his name was Thaddeus Russell. And the man basically said that Ron Paul likes to work with very left-wing people. Thaddeus Russell's words, not mine.
And I think you quoted "end the American Empire." That was troubling to you?
That's right, to end the American empire. Now, I am a firm believer, by the way, like most libertarians, most clear-thinking libertarians are, that America is way too involved in foreign countries, and I'm all for cutting back our involvement in foreign countries. Where I differ with Congressman Paul, and I think most Americans do, is that partnering with, quote, very left-wing people in order to bring about that result is very inadvisable.
Right. Before we move on, sir, but his core principles seem to be at least very close to the American conservative core principles of free markets, low taxes, small, non-invasive governments. The issue may come down to get a little sketchy when you look into foreign policy.
Well, and that's where I think the connection is very key. Let's examine the exact point you just brought up. He talks about free markets and maximizing free markets. He talks about maximizing personal freedom out of one side of his mouth. And on the other side of his mouth, he says that he would not go in to a place with a government that was harboring the terrorist to kill that terrorist unless he got agreement from that government. That terrorist is trying to minimize the very freedoms that Ron Paul is trying to maximize. Right. To me, that's very muddled thinking.
We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you, Chuck Roger. Another of Ron Paul's prickly issues is Israel. He's been quoted as saying we should support Israel over the Palestinians, but he has favored the elimination of foreign aid to Israel. Talk like that will get him in trouble with both the Christian right and the Jewish vote. Joining me now is Aaron Klein, senior reporter for WorldNet Daily. Aaron, Mr. Paul has said cutting off aid to Israel would be in the best interest of Israel. Do you agree?
Not only is that not accurate, but it's not in the best interest of the United States. What needs to be understood is that this is not aid, it's not charity, this is military cooperation. $2.5 billion a year, yes, but 75% of that is in military aid spent with U.S. corporations. But you have to look at the overall picture, and that is the joint American-Israeli military cooperation that is crucial for America's fight on terror, that is crucial for even the advancement of American technology, because so many times Israel bought aircraft, for example, from America and then sent it back improved, or joint military operations that absolutely are necessary for U.S., not just Israel, but for American security. And also look at the number of times that Israel carried out operations that the United States would not. In 1981, it was Israel that struck Saddam Hussein's nuclear plants. Can you imagine a Middle East with Saddam Hussein with nuclear capabilities? Or 2007, Israel struck Syria's nuclear reactor. So Ron Paul needs to understand that this is not just aid, and that any isolationist approach for the United States would essentially harm America as a superpower.
Well, tell me, Aaron, what would happen to Israel if the U.S. did cut off aid and I guess turn to an isolationist policy with regard to Israel in the Middle East? I mean, are we talking Hamas and Hezbollah taking over the whole Middle East?
You look at Israel right now, and it is actually surrounded more than ever by enemies bent on its destruction, whether in Egypt, where President Obama urged that transition to democracy, and now we see that transition toward Islamists, toward the Muslim Brotherhood. Iran, which is not only a threat to Israel, but also to the United States, inching closer toward nuclear capabilities to the north, Syria, Lebanon. All of these are not only threats to Israel, but also to the United States. So cutting off military aid, cutting off cooperation, this joint alliance is not only to the detriment of Israel, but to the United States. And let me tell you, because I'm based in the Middle East, I know the thinking here by America's enemies. It's destroy Israel first, and then next is the big Satan, quote unquote, according to them, and that is the United States of America.
So is there a feeling in Israel that let's hope and pray Ron Paul isn't elected president because it's going to get ugly in Israel, in the Middle East?
Certainly for the American establishment, the Israeli-American alliance, military relationship, strategic relationship, partnership is crucial to the way that Israel is viewed, crucial even to the United States. So yes, if Ron Paul is elected and if Ron Paul decides to cut off aid to Israel and to other countries, but certainly to Israel, this will be devastating for the Jewish state, and I also believe devastating for the United States of America.
All right, Aaron Crawling, thank you very much for your time. All right, we're going to bring it out to the panel. Angela, let me throw it to you. And the reason why we're going through this exercise is because we talked about it last night. People were really kind of enraged. They were thrilled that we did it. It was very informative, but there were the Ron Paul supporters very vehemently against what we had to say last night. But here it is. Here's a couple of looks at where a Ron Paul presidency may be troubling.
Right. So he says some things that people start to nod their head and say, okay, he's making some sense. His book, End the Fed. Before, people looked at it and they said, this is nuts. Now, look what's happening with the Fed. He's starting to make sense. Then there's other issues, just like defunding Israel. And you just have to scratch your head and say, Israel is one of our longest and best allies, the only Western-like democracy in the Middle East. That would be insane. We have to keep that relationship going.
But again, Adam, free markets, smaller government, lower taxes. Again, it's the foreign policy. And again, this little issue with bin Laden, which I can't get over personally, but that's a personal issue, and maybe for others as well. But again, a lot of his principles are core American conservative principles.
Well, look, I love the intellectual argument that he makes and what, you know, sort of the very sort of logical, linear thinking of libertarianism. But the simple fact of the matter is, as a political guy, Ron Paul ain't getting elected president. So it's a good discussion to have, but none of this stuff is ever going to come to pass.
Go ahead, Joey.
Well, I think what he's doing is he's sparking a debate, even if it is within his own party. And when you say things that may be contrary to the mainstream within your party, you provoke thought, you provoke angry viewers who call in and they perhaps defend him. But I think ultimately he's going to be viewed not only on this singular issue, which I do disagree with him on, but he's going to be viewed on as a whole. What are his other views? Does he stand for core Republican values, and how does he match against the other candidates?
Well, legalizing heroin is not a core Republican value.
Yeah, right. And
on the whole, Ange, on the whole, not these extreme.
What about the
Drug legalization is. It's one of the largest pillars of the libertarian.
and the sort of lack of national security.
let's be clear. It's personal freedoms, opening up all the prostitution, drugs. I don't know, driving fast.
Right.
I'm not sure.
So everyone's for smaller government. Everyone's for personal freedom, right? Republicans. And then you peel back the layer and you start to see, well, what does that really mean?
Why does he have to go all in libertarian? Why does he have to have all of it? Can't he say smaller government, free markets, lower taxes? Oh, but on that foreign policy, I think we really need Israel as an ally in the Middle East. So I'll keep funding
that. If he said that would be a more mainstream position.
Right.
And that would be a very, very standardized, Republican position of more freedom, smaller government, but national security, and, keeping our allies in the Middle East, especially those who are maintaining theirs and our national security.
Last thought,
ultimately, the voters will decide. I don't think it's probable that he will be elected president, but look, he sparks. He says some very interesting things, even if they are outside of the norm.
All right, we're going to leave
Joey
it there.
wants him to be the nominee. I see what's going on here.
There are a lot on the left that may want him to be the nominee. We're going to have to leave it there. We have a lot more Follow the Money coming up. You're watching the Fox Business Network, The Power to Prosper.